Good morning. I'm Catherine Bertini. I'm a distinguished fellow for global food and agriculture at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this year's Global Food Security Symposium. Just a reminder that the Council is a nonprofit, independent, and nonpartisan platform. Views here expressed are by individuals and do not represent the institutional position of the Council. Last year, we saw a historic and first ever UN Food Systems Summit where global leaders recognized the interconnectivity and the importance of food systems transforming the world. But since then, we've seen the food needs almost blow up over issues like climate change, COVID-19, and the infrastructural problems that cause, rising inequality, conflict, and then unprecedented levels of disruption, including the Russian war in Ukraine. So we've really seen now high fuel prices, high food prices, sometimes already food that's unavailable to those people who spend most of their incomes on food. And there's much to do for the global community and in each government around the world to try to solve this problem and ensure that millions more people do not starve. The World Food Program says that there are 49 million people in 43 countries who are already at the brink of famine and that number is growing. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we take advantage of the food that exists already? How do we grow more food? How do we reach these people that are so much in need? So we're at a major inflection point, and we're really counting on leadership from people around the world, and especially from the United States government. We're very fortunate today that we have with us Ambassador Cindy McCain, who can talk to us about some of these issues and about how the U.S. may be trying to deal with them. As I know, our listeners know, Ambassador McCain is a diplomat, she's a businesswoman, she's a humanitarian long before she became the ambassador in Rome. She's the former chair of the Board of Trustees of the McCain Institute for International Leadership at Arizona State University, where she oversaw the organization's focus on advancing character-driven global leadership based on security, economic opportunity, freedom, and human dignity. She was for many years on the board of Project Cure, and she's also been in the private sector, having been chairman of her family's business, Hensley Beverage Company. She earned an undergraduate degree in education and a master's in special education from the University of Southern California. She's already made her mark in Rome, only having been there a short period of time. She has a great deal of respect for all the other delegates, and certainly with the agencies to which she represents the United States. So, Ambassador, it's a real thrill to welcome you here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. We know that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has been very involved in looking at issues about how this food crisis can be averted. And he's talked to many governments and international institutions to ask them to take action on this matter. Can you give us a sense of some of the things the U.S. is doing to lead on global food security?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, thank you for having me. And this issue is such an important issue. It's always been around, food insecurity and food security, but now, of course, it's heightened to front and center because of the war in Ukraine. The United States, as always, is leading on this effort. We're the largest donors to the World Food Program. We're also one of the largest donor to FAO. These are both UN agencies that deal directly with food security issues and food in general. EFAD and some of the others do the same thing. What we're succinctly doing right now is making sure that we can help WFP get their job done in a better, quicker, more efficient manner, and also by rallying the world on these issues. The United States is always the first one there in any of these crises, but we're encouraging some of our world counterparts to do the same thing now. This is an unprecedented, unwarranted war that has occurred. as a result of the Russian invasion. And as we all know in the arena here, Ukraine was the breadbasket to not only Europe but to most of the world's vulnerable populations. So there's many things that the United States is doing, but those are two highlights: funding, of course, and helping others do their jobs better and make sure we can get this done. People are going to starve as a result of this. People are going to starve, and we're on the brink of famine in several parts of the world right now. So this is a time that is not only critical for the United States as being a donor and an activist in this area, but the world is on the brink now too because of the food insecurity.
Yes. The U.S. has been a leader in the past, but it's not often at the level of the Secretary of State. So,
Right.
So hopefully his involvement is going to really make more of a difference.
It also tells you that the president is focused on this as well, and it takes all of us to be able to do these things. And I'm grateful that both Secretary Blinken and, of course, the president have not only heightened this issue, but are active in it now and are making sure that things are getting done. So we're grateful for all this involvement, and certainly our ambassador in New York.
Yes, and I noticed, in fact, I attended a side event that she and the Secretary of State decided that when the U.S. was president of the Security Council, that food security would be their theme for that month, which is really important.
Yes, we just completed a ministerial a couple of weeks ago now that was dealing specifically with this issue, and so we're very grateful. Those of us that kind of work out in the field with all this stuff, we're very grateful for not only their involvement, but their continued involvement in this.
Yeah, right. Great. I'm glad you think Rome is the field for New York. But I know you also mean that you go all over the place yourself. You've been traveling already in that job. Well, one of the issues about food shortages are export bans and export restrictions. And we've seen some countries already who have cut off their exports of cereals, for instance. And we know from the last round, at 2008 to 2011, when there was a food price crisis, that's a really bad thing to do. Because not only does it cut off the access to that food from the people in the countries to which it was being exported, but it also even hurts the suppliers in country because they can't sell their goods. So how can we do something about that, or what can we do?
You raise a really good point here. We have to begin by encouraging countries not to ban exports and making sure that people not only realize what's going on and the effect that this could have on the world, but also, as you said, certainly within their borders of the country. Export bans are not going to help anything in this, because we together as a world need to help feed everybody. And banning foods or hoarding foods or whatever, however you want to put it, is not the answer to this at all. The answer is that right now is that the Russians need to pull out of Ukraine. That's the answer to this.
That would help immensely for many things, but certainly food. Even there's issues about getting food out of Ukraine that's already been harvested.
Yeah, it's very difficult, as you know. I mean, there's no corridors, there's no safe zones, there's none of that kind of stuff, and of course the ports are mined, and so it's a cascading issue that's affecting everything now. And unfortunately, I was most recently in Kenya and Madagascar, and the effect on those two countries alone, combined with climate change, there's some serious things happening there. And people, as I said, people are not only going to starve, but this is going to affect generations if we don't get a handle on it. Excuse me.
Yes, it certainly will. I attended a briefing recently of WFP Latin America, and they were talking about how this impacts even Latin America. People would normally think of the countries near the Black Sea or other, but as far away as Latin America, there's big impact.
Yes. Well, as you know, the Central American countries have been hit very hard with climate change. And so that, again, compounded with a lack of food substance to come in, or a lack of seeds in many cases, or a lack of the ability, oil, the other issues are oil. It's affecting everybody. As I said, it's a cascading chain of events that are it's harming the entire planet. And unfortunately, I don't think that it's going to end anytime soon. I wish, but the ability to be able, you also mentioned the ability to get the grain out that's already been harvested has been tragic. I mean, we're almost past the point of no return now on some of it. So there's been a lot of different thoughts and how we do it and all that, and I leave that to the WFP experts and others. But the point is, we need to get the grain out. We need to get it out.
Right. And I'm sure this potential of violence, I mean, beyond the outrageous war, the potential for violence is a concern also of the international community, and certainly the U.S. Again, based on what we saw the last time, when people don't have food, or it's so expensive they can't buy it.
Right. Well, anytime there's food insecurity, the existence or the possible existence of violence is right on its heels. And we're seeing that effect to a great degree around the world now. So the importance of making sure that not only can we get some of the grain out, but secondly, encouraging like U.S. farmers and other farmers around the world to grow more if possible, to grow more with less, which is the things we're working on at FAO in terms of how we can grow better crops with less water, less space, kind of thing. It's also unless we can work together, and I keep harping on this a little bit when I'm in some of these groups and some of the other things about working together as a globe. I realize sometimes it's a pipe dream because people don't always work well together, but we need to. This is something that affects all of us, and so growing more. Not putting export bans in place, and of course paying close attention to climate change is something else, and that's the big issue right now in terms of being able to have a future as well.
Right. Well, that was an answer to a question I wanted to ask you about medium term and long term too, because funding WFP and FAO now is very important. The social safety net is critical, or just food to vulnerable people is critical, but somehow we have to get to the point where when we have a crisis that is created that it potentially impacts a lot of people, we don't have to rush to do that because there are better systems in place. Right,
better systems in place. Sure, you are exactly right, and we've talked about there's a lot of great ideas out there, and there's a lot of really smart people who are working on this. But unless we work together, we're not going to have much in the way of real of the ability. Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, unless we work together, we're not going to be able to do this. And in the case of small farmers, let's say in Africa, things like that, where they need seeds, they need a little help, but it's on a small basis because it feeds their family. That's what we're going to lose in a lot of this, or the small, subsistence farming and farming that really supports a community or a village. And the war, combined with everything else that I've mentioned, is really, it's again a cascading effect that's damaging everything.
Yes. Now, the Food Systems Summit made a bunch of recommendations. Of course, FAO has been working for years on being in a position to be able to help countries, particularly in the South. But we still have to figure out a way to make this all happen, and I'm not sure anybody has the magic wand yet or what to do.
I think you're right on that. There's a lot of things that could be done, can be done, but will they be done? Who knows at this point? But I do know that organizations like WFP and our FAO and our EFADs and all of our other organizations that work on just these issues are working very hard, and because we're in a hurry now. We need to be in a hurry to figure out how we can fix this, and not just the existence of the war in terms of what the damage it's caused, but in general. I mean, this is a long-term problem that was coming down the road anyway, and now it's been catapulted. So, less water, less land, all the things we talk about. I encourage our folks to think outside the box at the embassy. Just think outside the box. As weird as it may sound, let's talk about it, because we might be able to at least pass it on or work with it in some way. It's a very exciting arena to be working in, and I don't mean that in a war way. I wouldn't want people to misconstrue that, but this has direct effect on the planet. And so for those of us that work in it now, it's very exciting to be a part of that perhaps we might have a little existence of success if we work hard.
I sure hope so. And I think together we can do that. And there's a meeting coming up. The G7 is going to be at the end of the month. And Germany has over the last few years exhibited a lot of leadership in this area. And certainly we're hopeful that they will at the G7. What would you hope that might be achieved at the G7? Well,
a global perspective that we need to work on this together, obviously. I mean, the things that I've mentioned throughout this discussion today. But I'd like to see, the encouragement, not just the U.S. saying we need more help from everybody, but other countries saying we need more help from everybody. And we work very closely with Germany, certainly in Rome we do, and I know in other arenas. And I'm just hoping that we can figure something out. I mean, we have a real hellstorm coming at us, and we're going to have to, otherwise, as I said, not just famine, but with those things comes violence, as you mentioned, and comes other problems. So to have a stable world and happy children, we're going to have to figure out how to feed everyone. And it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not. When President Obama was president during the last crisis, the G7 in Italy actually came up with a list of pledges that kind of governments were going to undertake.
Right. Yeah.
So let's hope they do something like that again.
Going
beyond money, right? I mean, as you said several times, how can we build coalitions? How can we work together? How can we think outside the box? Those are all important parts.
All of them, very important, very important. What I've also seen a little bit of is the use of water as almost a weapon. The inability to gain access to not just clean water, but water in general. And so water is another issue that we work on very, very, very deeply within our embassy and others too, I know. Because the water, I come from a state where I tell everybody, I'm joking, but it's the truth. We count every drop. We have to. We live in the desert. So I've always had a good appreciation for the lack of water and what it can do. And so that's what we're trying to work on very, very hard now and very closely with everyone to make sure that we can. I don't know how you solve a water issue unless everyone gets involved. So I think we'll see. But countries like Madagascar are devastated because there's no water. They have no access.
Well, that's a place where Arizona expertise and Israeli expertise and others who have found a way to make deserts work. Really helpful. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
Well, before I say thank you, do you have any other thoughts about how we can work together before we say goodbye?
Well, I think first of all, I appreciate the heightened discussion from you and from others within the United States. We're actually talking about this issue now. We're talking about the needs and what we can do. And if there's anything I'm sure of, the ingenuity of the United States can figure this out to some degree. So I think what we look at as obviously the future. Right now, we're faced with immediate needs, and then we have our long-term needs that we need to take a look at. So I want I guess if I had a wish, I would say I want everyone to stop and listen and read about this, or listen to people, the experts in the field, so that you can be helpful with us as well. It's going to take everybody. And so all I can do is encourage, and I'm happy to do that as much as I can, because we certainly need everyone's help in this.
Well, from our perspective in Chicago, we're very proud to have an ambassador who's got the experience and the commitment, the dedication as you. So thank you very much.